Township Board study session, 6:32 p.m. on September 27th. Study session is regarding meeting format. Since I will open it up to anyone of the board members who has something to say about our formats. I have a couple of things I'd like you to think about, but I'll start with anyone else. And if there is no one else, I'll throw my things out.
Jim?
Yes.
I've got a couple of comments on it. And right now you just want to talk about the format of the meeting, correct?
Well, that's what Jameson, I expanded it to more than just the public comment part.
Okay.
I think from last meeting, we know Jameson wants to make the second public comment open to any topic.
Okay.
Not just action items, if I recall correctly.
And my first comment on that is, I think we should, by law, we're required to have one comment section.
Correct.
And I'd like to see that be the first public comment, open to anything, and especially open to or encourage people to talk about the action items that are on the agenda, so that if they do have something to say, that's their chance to bring up, and maybe they've got a point to make that maybe we've discussed, we've taken into account, and maybe it's something that we haven't.
All right, David.
Yeah.
David, I'm just gonna hold you up, because hopefully, these are the comments that Jameson needs to hear, because it's going to go to his question. So if we can just hold that thought.
Okay.
If there's something other than public comment, let's discuss that first, and hopefully Jameson will get here.
Okay.
Well,
I know one of the things that's been floating.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's been floating around is making the board packet available on our website at the same time that it's open to the members of the board. And personally, I don't have a problem with that.
I'd ask for Uda's comments on this. I myself have no problem with it. I know we can do it. That's not a problem. We can put it up there just like we put out the agenda itself. Udo, I guess I don't really understand why I can understand back before we had the electronics, when we had hard copies, not having the agendas out, having to print them. But now that we have the electronics and we can put it out just like we put out ours, is there any reason that you know of why they couldn't be out there for the public?
Not really. I think the main thing was always a logistical thing, but they were made available in a printed format for people to pick up prior to a meeting before we went to the full electronic meetings. I guess my reservation with it is that action information is within it. Everything that needs to be there is there. And then once it's seconded, of course, you can go to discussion. And of course, even at that point, those motions can then be modified, by a suggestion of a board member to say, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, friendly or otherwise. So I think for me, it's just a matter of caution that the information we're putting out there, first of all, is nothing that will compromise something the township is doing. I think most of our information is already available to the public as it is. Resolutions that we're going to vote on, the tax, like today, the tax levy. So again, I guess my only caution is, again, that, if we do something like that, that it's clear, even maybe put it right on the motion, that this is recommended language or suggested language for the motion, so that we don't get somebody raising their hand during the meeting saying, well, I have the motion, I did a little
and it's not yet. Yeah.
I did a little research on the internet, and that's not the motion that you handed to us. And so, again, because the board is the board is empowered to make the decisions, to have the discussions, to request any and whatever level of input the board wants. So I don't think, it's a problem to put that information out there. I think the problem simply is how well can it be managed?
Well, yeah, and I guess that would be kind of my job primarily during the meeting, and certainly any of the board members could jump in on that if somebody were to bring that up. Yeah, you're right. That could be that this is. I mean, it is until voted on. It's suggested language, and it will give you the gist of the motion. In 99% of the cases, very rarely do we ever change completely on an action item and the motion itself. So,
and if I might say, I would be careful, like when we have when we're voting on somebody's bid, for instance, how much of the bid proposals do we make public?
Well,
some companies may not want their bid made public.
We and I believe we have the ability to actually, we could put out something like that, where we put out the winning bid, that we have. As far as the backup information, it can go. That could just go to the board. So we can do things if the situation comes up.
Also, I don't know if Brian is still active on the meeting, but I'd like to ask Brian for his input. Does he know of any other communities within the clerk, world of the clerk that does this?
Yeah, and there's Brian. Yeah, Brian and I talked about this after last meeting because it was brought up.
Put the information out there.
Yeah,
we're actually in the minority.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to know.
Yep. So we have. I think we should try it, and if we run into any,
we should try it. But I think we have to be careful, and I don't want to misspeak here. But it sounds like that I heard that there's a possibility. I thought I heard something about maybe the bids and others don't want their bid out. That's life. The bid's going out. Or we're in a packet that has the ability to go out. Then I believe it should go out because the people should have a
public knowledge and therefore a public document. And I'm not asking to be facetious. I'm just is there anything?
No, I think that's why I can't think of what we might not publish in the packet of anything. And if there is something, if we can't put it out, we probably can't talk about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean that's fine.
I mean, Jim, you're right. It's again, always proceed with caution.
Right.
You can't think of anything today.
Or they put something want to put something on the agenda in their backup material. They have to review it and make sure it's appropriate.
And I think that will make us a more careful organization in general. People will pay closer attention to details, not that they don't already. But Jameson, my point being that in any other operation, you have a standard operating going to do it, and what can be, what can't be, but just so that we're prepared for eventualities. And
I definitely I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't want to go in blind, and say, oh, we're
Right.
just going to do this.
I also just don't want us to start hedging ways to not share information with the public. And I know that's nobody's intent, but government sometimes deviates from its own intent by its procedures. So I just wanted to hedge it.
You brought up wanting to have this, so I wanted to start with you. And let me just quickly say, the study session will run until 7:30 if we need that time. At 7:30, we will go to our meeting. If we need more time to discuss this, we'll just have another study session. So,
that sounds good.
We'll give it all its proper time. But I wanted to start with you, Jameson, because you had the first idea on this regarding the second public comment. So I wanted to start with you. So I'll turn it over to you.
So without having by limiting the public comment to action items, we kind of hamstring some of the public interaction, which I didn't think was initially an issue since they should be reacting to action items. But I forget the gentleman's name. He's been up the past couple times, starts with a B. Anyway, that gentleman wanted to make comments about action items we deleted, but couldn't make comments on them because he could only comment on action items. So it's kind of a catch-22, right? So at the end of the meeting, people should be able to comment on our actions, not just on our action items, but he couldn't because one of our actions was to remove an action item.
But
so if we,
Jameson, that came the way, we have the additions, deletions before the first public comment. So he could have very easily commented about that at the first public comment.
That's true. But in order to facilitate receiving feedback for everything we've done in the meeting, I thought opening the public comment at the end to just the same format as the first half. Like, they can talk about anything they like. There isn't too many people that sticks around for the final public comment. So the people that do are pretty dedicated, or I think have something important to say. So I think it makes sense to provide them with the opportunity to do that, even if it wasn't one of our action items.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to turn it to you because you had comments about this item.
Yeah, a couple. I think the first comment period, I would welcome public input on action items, so that if they have a point to make that I or anybody else hasn't considered, and it could have a bearing on your vote, or at least give you pause, but that's the kind of input. Input on an action item at the end, it's like it's already a done deal. So comments at that point are either nice going or what the hell are you thinking about? But that should be up front. That's I don't see what bringing up something that's already been acted upon.
And
so I'd want those comments early on.
Along that line, I don't see, again, keeping in mind as to the purpose of this meeting. Purpose of this meeting is for us to do our business. And one of the requirements is that we do have public comment, but it's for us to do our business. And I don't know how that second public comment helps us in any way to do our business. Our business is over with at that point. And I'm not sure what those comments do for us. Certainly if they don't like something, or they really thought it was great, they certainly, there's a number of ways they can contact us to let us know Uda, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I tend to agree with Dave on this. I like the idea of having an open public comment about action items only at the beginning of the meeting. One, it focuses attention to the action items that are about to be discussed. If we are going to proceed with making our packets more publicly available, we might actually get some interesting or helpful or at least noteworthy public participation prior to going into the action items. In past iterations of the board, and I didn't say Borg, I said board, we would have public comment even after, right after or during each action item, but we changed that. So I think giving the public a moment at the beginning of the meeting as we go into debating, discussing, and deciding action items, to me makes a lot of sense. I have to agree that having the action item discussion at the end of the action items doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's really just there then for the, up or down people telling you what's going on. I find that the after the meeting comments a lot of times are simply residents taking the opportunity to school the board and have their say about various subjects that are going on in and around the township. And some of that can be very helpful, and some of that can just be very, long, but it's public comment. And so it gives people a chance to get something off their minds. So, but if we keep any public comment in place, I really like the idea of having the first public comment regarding action items only, because if people start talking about a whole bunch of other things, that kind of detracts again from the purpose of the meeting, which is the action items that are about to come. If they want to make other comments about other things afterwards at the end of the meeting, then no one is held to them, because we still have to do our business. People watching the meeting can then, elect to continue watching the public comment or not. I mean, we still have to listen, but at least in terms of the business of the meeting, having that public comment open mic at the end of the meeting, at least lets us get our business done reasonably quickly.
But yeah, and that open mic is a problem I have, because that's not part of our meeting. That's not the purpose of our meeting. If we want to have a meeting, or if a trustee, a board member wants to have a meeting, open mic meeting with the public, they can do that. It's not the purpose of our meeting. Looking at our last couple of meetings, 3-4 hours, and not a whole lot, not necessarily a whole lot of that spent on our business. A whole lot is spent on that comment about whatever. And I actually is, although I would like to narrow it, I don't have a problem with it being an open, any topic, that first public comment, which includes obviously the action items. The second one, I don't see any reason for.
I think sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no, I just, and I'm done. That, I just don't see how that one fits into our meeting.
So
Jim Jameson, so Jim, what you're saying, just to, is that you would have a public comment on anything at the beginning of the meeting,
just like we do now.
But then not have a second public comment.
Not have a second one.
Okay.
The second one, even though we limit it to action items, we have some people that go off on other than action items. But even on action items, we voted on everything. It doesn't do us any good. And certainly it doesn't stop them from making comments on our actions. Our phones, our doors, our emails are always open. So that can be done. It doesn't take that away from them. But it doesn't give us any information that's going to do us any good on those action items.
So I think there's I guess a couple of quick points. The first point I would make just on having open comment at the end is they could also address our individual reports. So sorry, I have something in my eye. So if, and I'm as a ridiculous, I guess, example, if Dave comes out during his report and talks about the $250 million we spent on the fleet of Lamborghinis for police, that might be something that people would address, right? And I know that's a ridiculous example, but
I see what you're saying. Yes.
So during our reports, sometimes we bring up actions of the commissions or other items we're working on or projects or whatever that isn't necessarily an action item. So maybe there's a compromise in there where the second round of public comments have to be about something the board has discussed or has been addressed. If you don't want somebody coming up there and talking about how much they're really upset by how green the grass is across the street last Tuesday or whatever. And I think that would kind of be in the middle and match at least the intent of why I brought this up. The other thing is there are tertiary reasons for public comment. And I realize our board meetings are business meetings, but it is the only opportunity for someone to address the board face-to-face writ large, which can sometimes have more impact. It's also the opportunity for, I guess I don't have a better way of saying this, but for a citizen to bring awareness to something or gain support for something, not just from the board, but from their fellow citizens, right? So if we do something that, the whole township would hate, but only, Billy from Lake Road knows about it, and he comes before the board and he's like, I'm upset that you guys did this and this. It airs the grievance in public so everyone can see it. And I realize you could do that at the beginning of the meeting as well. But I think my primary motivation was just they should be able to address any topic we addressed, not just action items, I guess would be the middle of the road of what I'm going for.
Would be not on anything on the agenda. You would make it anything on the agenda instead of just action.
Inclusion of the report.
Right, which is on the agenda. Which is on the agenda, yep. Okay. Making a note.
Yeah, I would.
That's a good point, Jameson.
Yeah, I would support Jameson on that. I think we're going to cover a variety of topics, and some people are going to do some homework before the meeting. A lot of people are not. I think, at the end of the day, the goal here is to do what's best long-term for the community. And there's a certain amount of knowledge on this board, but there's a tremendous amount of knowledge out there in the public on Groseal. And we could discuss something and maybe not get it right, or maybe you weren't aware of this or that, something to do with technical information like engineering and stuff of that nature. And there's a lot of concerns around those areas, big investments for us. And for someone to be able to share that with us after we made a decision, we may be in our best interest to come back and talk about it again at another meeting or study session, then at another, business meeting. But I just think we can benefit from it and the community can benefit from it. And I think, from time to time, we will have some comments that really don't add a tremendous amount of value. But the few that do, or the many that do, could make a tremendous difference in a positive way. And so I'm very much in support of if you want to limit it to anything that that was discussed or included in the packet, I support that 100%.
Thanks, Mike.
Jim, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead, Joe.
No, I just, I don't have the answer this time. I don't have the solution to it, but one thing that was brought up in these discussions is you have the trustees reports, you have the supervisor's report, you have even, you've got the attorney's report, you've got our, when we have an action item, it's open to the board, we have our discussion. The people at the end, or the people in the beginning, even when they hear all this, there is no forum or real way to talk about what they haven't heard yet. And that was the only issue that I had. The only thing they can talk about now is the action items. So since they can go through a whole meeting and then hear a lot of new things, there still is no forum for them to speak on those new things that they've heard. Otherwise, how could they even talk about it if they haven't heard it yet? Is my point. So,
Right, and that's a good point. I mean, especially as far as the reports, or if there's a presentation or a discussion item which comes at the end of the meeting, that's a good point. That they wouldn't have that background of our discussion.
correct.
Before.
That's exactly what I meant. Thank you on that.
Mm-hmm. So you support that too on agenda items?
If we can come up with a way, yes, I guess if the agenda items, like as Mike stated, then I would support something like that. A solution to that problem.
Okay.
Or in the materials, something in the materials, right?
Right.
Right. So.
Yes, Uda.
Yeah, I think to that end too, maybe make it more publicly known too that a resident can approach a trustee with action items, that we encourage our residents to reach out to us as well. That is one of their avenues toward getting something onto an agenda. Through our different reports, we have an opportunity to make announcements that are relevant to the business of the township. Not frivolous announcements, but events that commissions are having, forums that organizations are having, fundraisers that our community groups may be having. That we also kind of, and I don't have an answer for this either, but reach out to the public to let them know that they have access to us to pass along additional information for the community to share, not just during public comment, but that they can also reach out to the board and or managers and bring something forward.
Good point. And maybe we need to start saying that in our reports, that we welcome in between meetings, getting in contact with us, whether it's by phone, in person, or email, and letting us know their ideas on items and the availability of the action item that has to be sponsored by a board member. An individual cannot put on a action item, but they can bring it to a board member to sponsor and put it on. Okay, well, I think we were heading in a direction on this from what I hear, that maybe on our next meeting we possibly could have an action item regarding this. Anything else on this? That specific item. There were a couple others that I wanted to bring out if we have time, but go ahead, Uda. Uda, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Just again, I'm looking right at Derek and thinking, as our manager, do you have any ideas or comments to what we've been discussing?
I definitely think there's some value if you're going to do some adjustment to the idea of if you're going to do any kind of limitation on the comments, it's to have the comments about the action items swap from the bottom to the top, because I think there was a lot of value to public comment as it relates to those action items, but you can't obtain that value after the motion and the action has already been taken. So I think that's where the value is. Also, when you move the general comments down to the bottom, for those people that are attending the meeting from the public that are mostly there for the action items and they don't want to stick around any longer, they're not interested in all the other things that are mentioned, they can bug out, they can leave after the action items, if they choose to do that without having to worry about the other stuff at the end relative to the action items they were there for originally, and getting the comments at the end of the meeting about those from the residents versus the beginning. So there might be some value to that too. So, but I think Dave's suggestions had a lot of value relative to maybe swapping those two.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
Derek, just so I understand you, because you can do that now, right? I mean, you can talk about anything, including the action items at the beginning. So you're going to get
Correct.
the benefit
Correct.
that you mentioned.
Right.
So are you not in favor of allowing people, residents or whoever decides they want to say something, to talk about new things that came up that they weren't aware of, and trustee updates or anything else? Are you against that?
No, I'm not necessarily against that. I'm just saying if in the current format, I think there's value if you swap those two. So,
Yeah, he's just saying put that at the end.
right. That way your comment at the end of the meeting, they can talk about anything they want or anything that's on the agenda. It's the more liberal comment period that's at the end of the meeting. Once your business is all concluded and you're going to have these lengthy conversations about all topics, you push those to the end and you take advantage of trying to go through your business, your meeting in an efficient manner, review those comments that are pertinent to the action items at the beginning of the meeting, get the value from the residents and the comments associated with the actions you're going to be taking, at the beginning rather than at the end. I think there's a lot more value to it then. And then you would still maintain your comment period, but at the end of the meeting about all other topics. So
You're for restricting the beginning just to things that are action items or in the material.
I think if you're going to maintain restrictions, I think the action item comments have greater value in the beginning than the end, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
David?
I think that, coupled with the access to the packet before the meeting, lets people who are, allows residents who are interested in one or more of the action items, they have the opportunity to review that part of the packet. So it gives them more information so that their comments relative to the agenda can be more fine-tuned and more direct. And I think in the long run, more helpful to the board members.
So anything on the agenda, right? Is that what you're saying, Dave?
No, I'd
Anything
like the first comment period, I'd like to see limited to the action items.
But what if there's something on the consent agenda that
Oh, well, that's, I mean,
feel that's not action, really? I mean,
well,
you see something on there and they got the whole deck and they read through all of that material, and there's a lot of it, as you know, and they got something they want to add. So anything.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think the consent agenda is 3, 4, 5 action items that have just been condensed into one vote.
Yes.
For expediency.
So that's fair game.
So there are action items, and the information on those action or consent agenda items is part of the packet. So.
And just so we're clear, any board member can ask to remove one of those action items from the consent agenda to add it on as a regular action item for public discussion. So essentially the consent agenda is simply, we've all agreed that these are items of business that need to be taken care of and they're not controversial. There's not likely to be a debate over, you know, our
somebody
bills.
retiring or
Right.
you
But
know,
any
you're
one
gonna
of those
accept it.
items, you could vote, you could ask to take off, and it's not voted on. You simply ask to take it
Yeah,
off. And it is
if in case you don't know, on consent agenda items, if Joe wants a consent agenda item moved to action, all he has to do is request it. It doesn't
And
have to be
that's,
voted on by anybody, by
so
the
who
rest of the board.
decides if it gets moved then, or it's automatic? It can't be
It'd be
stopped.
it would,
Automatic.
if Joe, if one of the board members says, well, let's move a check register from consent to action, that's all it takes. That one person moving it to action. And then we, you know, number whatever. And then it's discussed as an action item.
Okay.
Carl's been quiet. He's
You're
on
muted,
mute.
Carl.
That's because
Just taking it all in.
we had him, Mike, we had him on mute and we weren't going to take him off.
Now you poked the bear, Mike.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I'm good.
Carl.
I think that the points that been brought up are excellent. It is a consensus, and I'm very pleased that to be a part of it. I think this is a good idea.
If I may, we got 15 minutes left before our regular meeting starts. And I think we have had a good discussion, and I think we know where we're going on this. As far as that the public comments sections, be changing them around but not dropping anything. I did want to throw out the starting time of our meeting. I've said this in the past, I would like to see our meeting start at 6:30. If we had, like today, a study session, the study session would start at 6:30. If we didn't have a study session, the regular meeting would start at 6:30. Again, just for the people that have to be here, a good number of them have been here all day, and then you have the long wait in between. We have managers who can't go home, or you know don't live on the island, so they're not going home. Looking at the other commission meetings and everything, it just seems like it would be appropriate. Looking at other meetings, board meetings of other communities, they all start earlier. Some start much earlier than even our study session. So I would like you to just think about having a start time of 6:30. And if we have a study session, that would start at 6:30. And then the regular meeting would start at, let's say, 7:30, because we have to put that out. So any thoughts on that, Uda?
Well, as long as you're willing that sometimes a board member can't be there at 6:30, you know, depending on how I happen to have a job off the island, depending on how the day goes, I may or may not be able to be present by 6:30. Today was a longer day, ergo the uniform. You know, I don't know if anyone else, you know, if there's a tie up at the bridge or whatever. Obviously on Zoom, it's not a big problem to make a meeting. When we go back to live meetings, it becomes a little more difficult. I understand the reason behind it. But I also want to say that some communities have their meetings illegally early. So you know, there is something to be said for having it too early.
Right.
You want to have it in such a way that the majority of people who are working have an opportunity to be home and ready to either participate or listen or watch or be present. So, you know,
and I mean, we can even, I say 6:30. I mean, that, you know, that my personal preference would be we just start all our meetings at 6:30 and adjust for study session. We could even have it, if it's a study session, we start at 6:30. If it's just a regular meeting, even starting at 7. You know, something like that. I mean, just I just think we need to start our meetings a little earlier.
Uta, Jim,
Yeah, go ahead.
everybody. I just know that, you know, when I first started getting involved in you know, on the commission and involved in, you know, government period, I guess, I found it very difficult, extremely difficult, to get back in time for the meetings in general. And sometimes, you know, I think they were at 7. Joe, what were the commission meetings when, Carl, you know, what were they, 7?
It was always 7 o'clock.
I mean, you know, and
you're
you're
talking
coming straight
police
from work.
commission.
You hadn't had time to even eat, let alone change. And I think there's a lot of working folks out there that want to participate. So I personally, for, you know, in terms of the community and the residents, I think we want more participation, but it's very difficult if you're, you know, carrying a full-time job that goes beyond 40 hours a week, you know, to come to these things. And so I would be against it for that reason, Jim. I mean,
Okay.
it's not a problem for me
fair.
at all.
I mean, you know,
6:30, hell, you can make it at 5, it'd be better for me. You know, I'm retired. You know, I can do it at
5
2.
o'clock it is.
In fact, I'd like it at 1 o'clock, right after lunch. And but I think for our constituency, it would probably hurt more than it would help.
You know, and I say that based on basically 9 years of attending these meetings and people not showing up to them. Of course, and it's the same with the commission meetings. You know, you don't get a lot of people attending your meetings. The meetings are all on TV. They're all rebroadcast. So those people, you know, if they can't be at the meeting as it's happening, they certainly can see it. They certainly can bring their comments to us. So we're not really taking anything away from anybody. And if we saw, Carl, I see you there. I would certainly, you know, if there were a lot of people coming, it'd be different, but there aren't. So, Carl, go ahead.
I would prefer looking at 7 o'clock. I think between the changes that are being proposed to the agenda and having the meeting start at 7, that is something that we could at least take a look at and try. And my recollection is most of the commissions meet at either 7 or 7:30. I'm a little bit hesitant to want to start the board out of sync with what we're doing with our other meetings.
Well, actually,
we're in favor of doing 7.
We're the only commission. We're the only board that meets at 7:30. Everybody else meets at 6, 6:30, or 7.
I would be fine with 7 o'clock as a trial.
Other comments on that? Joe?
Jim, since it's a study session, I guess I'd like to say to the people, I'm not sure how many are listening now, but you know, we've all been talking about what's best for us and everything, and I get that. I get the guys that have to work here, guys and ladies that have to stay. I understand that it helps them, and maybe it helps some of us or you. I would just like to hear from some of the people, though, to see is this a hardship? Is it, you know, Carl's splitting it right at 7? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's best. Yeah. But since they're watching, I just would say in the future, maybe if you'd like to comment on the time change, because I once again, I do believe that, you know, if we can help out the workers, great. But we also got to think of the people who are listening to us that put us in these positions to do their work. And I would just say once again, maybe it would be nice to hear from them if they have some comments on it, to get a hold of us or during the meeting or however you'd like, so.
You know what,
Shoot one of us
I'm
an
gonna, at my report section, I'll ask the people. And I mean, this is not something that's being changed today, this is just a study session.
Right, that's
So,
why I meant that
yeah,
way. Thanks.
Right.
I guess I would just have two comments, and that's that generally speaking, and the reason I originally kind of brought this up was that, this is a representative democracy. So the more the people can interact with us, whether that's by having a meeting at 7 or 7:30 or by having two sets of public comment, that's us doing our due diligence as public servants. And sometimes we got to work late, listening to their comments, but that's fine by me. I mean, that's why we're here. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I just want to get it out there, Jim. I didn't know if you had another thing you wanted to talk about, but given that we would be making the board packet available online, I would also like to talk about, because that enables us to make changes more flexibly or with more flexibility. So if we could increase the window that things can be submitted to the board, to maybe 7 days out or 5 days out, I think that would allow us to at least get maybe not more done, but more things talked about. And the more things we talk about, the better job we'll do.
Got it. Yeah, I will. What I'll do is I'll talk to Brian tomorrow, and then I'll put an email out to you guys regarding that, so we get the information out to the board on that. All right. I did want to throw, and maybe I can quickly do this. I wanted to throw out the thought of changing up our meetings a little bit, in that having the first meeting of the month more as a discussion of action items. So it'd follow the same, we'd follow the same agenda format, but instead of at the first meeting, instead of action items, they'd be discussion items. So that we would have on these action items, we would have a couple of weeks to think about what we've heard, ask questions. So at the second meeting, we'd vote on them, and everybody should have everything taken care of by then. I know, just in my time on the board, the idea of having a study session and then going into a meeting and voting and going home and going, gosh, I forgot, I didn't ask this, I didn't ask that, or a couple days later, it doesn't give us a lot of time on these action items after the discussion to think about them and ask our questions. So I would just ask that think about going to that format. That's somewhat, I believe the school board uses kind of that approach, where they have what they call a workshop the first meeting and just talk about the things they want to vote on. The vote comes in the second meeting. Everything else would stay the same. We'd still have the availability of putting something on if it were an emergency, which, to add it and get it voted on, we wouldn't have to wait a month. But for the things that aren't an emergency, we'd have plenty of time to talk about them and think, give some thought to them. So I would like to see us go to that type of format with our meetings. So just think about that. That's all I'm asking. All right, and with that, if there is nothing else, we'll close the study session and move to our regular meeting. Any other comments?
I just like to say one thing. I think
Mike,
that would be helpful. I haven't had a lot of time to think it through, so don't hold me to it. But to me, I mean, 2 meetings, and a lot of times we never even get to discuss things that we really need to discuss. And if we have to have another meeting to vote on something, we can always have one.
Right.
Some emergency, right? So, but what we definitely don't have enough of is discussions like we just had here.
Correct.
And to your point, I mean, a lot of stuff gets left on the floor, and then we go, oh boy, you know, I wish I would have thought of that. So I quite frankly, right now, not having given this a ton of thought, but given it some today, I like the idea.
Okay.
So, what it's worth.
Good. Good. All right. As I say, I will talk to Brian. I'll get that out to you. Maybe a little summation of what we talked about tonight, and maybe what we want as an action item on the next meeting regarding the board meeting itself, format-wise. Udo.
Just, I guess I want to riff on what Mike said, is I think also taking the pressure of a vote off a discussion leads to a more civil discussion. And given some of the heavier topics that we face, you know, and may face in the future, having one meeting each month to just discuss things, even in Zoom or live, I think takes the pressure off the debate, and it becomes an easier conversation for us. Without
Very, very good comment, Udo. You're exactly. I never thought of that, but you're absolutely right. If you're sitting here and going, okay, what I'm hearing now, and I'm not sure what it is, but I got to vote in 5 minutes on it, I feel pressure that I'm not really comfortable. And you're exactly right. This hopefully would relieve that and give everybody plenty of time to think, to ask questions. And when we come back, you know, at the meeting to vote on it, should be pretty well set on their position.